Hello, 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 and welcome to the Grandma's Wealth Wisdom YouTube channel / Facebook page. Wherever you're joining us, really glad that you're here today, especially the people that are watching the replay of this video. Thank you so much for catching it. I'm want to give you a little bit of extra content here while we're waiting for the people who are going to join us live. Today, we're talking about some really fun things that were inspired by three different conversations. One being an email that we got in our inbox from the famous Jim Edwards. The second one being the podcast episode that we published today called How to Never Be Poor. And then the third, a very awesome man who we've looked up to for a long time. Unfortunately, never got to meet Nelson Nash and some of the great writing and thinking that he's done in the realm of personal finance. So, as well as like business finance and all kinds of amazing things. And kind of the premise of today is this whole like financial survival skills. And what if there was this financial survival skills training? Say that 10 times fast. I've often thought of money as an adventure, and like you have point A, you want to get to point B, you got to figure out how to use your money to like get you to where you want to go from wherever you are, and that can be an adventure. But I hadn't really thought of it as you could get lost on that adventure. There could be, some wilderness in the midst there. If it's an adventure, there are definitely risks to it. So we wanted to think about how do you journey that journey, right? And have your survival skills ready in case something goes wrong. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. Brandon, so in the description, I started with this, how former / always Marines, and I know you are a former / always Marine. So I had to put that in, once a Marine, always a Marine kind of thing. Tell us a little bit about what you think of when you think of survival skills training.
And I think I spelled it right. I just did it real quick just now and blindly. So is that right? Did I spell it right? Financials?
I think so.
So the thing is, whenever you're in the military, and they say that once a Marine, always a Marine, because here's the thing. You learn a lot of things about how to survive. Like, what if you have no water? You have your canteen. What if you get stuck in a certain place and you have to live on your own, or you're in combat? How do you overcome those things? And I think that's called basic training that they send you through. Every person who has gone into the military knows basic training, right?
Yeah.
And I think that basic training is just that. It's basic training. So that way you have a way to move forward. You then go to your next your job, MOS job, or whatever it is. But you learn all those things that are needed to survive in the military.
Yeah.
At least there. And here's the thing that I think is really interesting. I was told I wouldn't be able to make it through basic training. I didn't have the skills or ability to do it. So anyway, I did it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. I never thought about that before, that basic training really is the basics, and you learn things like how to build a fire and shelter, as well as like how to fire a gun, how to climb a wall and stuff like that.
How to crawl through mud and how to like make your bed, all kinds of things that I think are important, not just on, hey, let's make a bed, but how does it relate to everything else? Even carrying your tray from the lunch table, there is a certain way that you carry a tray because it reinforces how you march with a weapon.
Interesting. Because I remember, so I obviously never was in the military. Maybe not obvious. I just wasn't. Um, but I did go camping as a kid with like a bunch of other kids. And in particular, one like camping with hiking, they did a lot of survival skills training with
Mhm.
us. And some things were like basic, like if you find berries, how to tell if you can eat them or if they're poisonous and what to do, like the steps to take. Um, and then like a little bit of like how to build a fire, even if you don't have a match, right? And then also how to do it when you have a match, how to cook your own food, different things like that. And it was super like, I've never needed to use them, but I feel a lot more safe going through life knowing I could potentially do some of those things. Now, in the first world, there are definitely survival skills that are a little different, like how to change your own tire if you're on the side of the road. When we lived in Chicago, so I went to college in Chicago. The first day we were on campus during orientation, they did a almost like a survival skills training, how to be smart in the city, right? There's a lot of that kind of stuff that happens in adulting, but unfortunately, we haven't brought up money yet. Like all of those survival skills kind of things that we're thinking
Yep.
about, whether it's in the military or it's, camping as a kid or as a college student. I don't know anybody that's teaching financial survival skills.
Well, and I talk to clients, I mean, literally all the time, and they're like, man, I wish I would have known this. I wish I would have done this. Or, you know, all kinds of conversations. And I'm talking to people who are in really bad positions. Um, and it's partially situations that happen, right? And that's part of what we talked about, how to never be poor in the last episode or
The
podcast.
episode that dropped
Um,
today on the Grandma's Wealth Wisdom podcast.
yeah. So sometimes there's way that things do happen, right? Things that life happens. There's things that come up. Uh, a flat tire happens, right? Whatever. But the question is, okay, how do you overcome it? And could you have prevented more calamity along your life? And I find it interesting that almost like unhealthy people, when it comes to fitness and everything else, are things tend to happen around them more often than healthier people. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if there's a cause and effect. I have no idea. Um,
Hmm.
but I find that interesting, and maybe it starts with a mindset around our money. When we're 18, when we think we don't need any of that stuff, we're never going to have to figure out how to crawl through mud or whatever. But maybe those skills of learning how to carry a tray is important, just as important in our money kind of things. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, for sure. So we want to hear from you. What do you think are some basic financial survival skills? If you were going to have a basic financial survival skills training, what do you think needs to be covered? Imagine some of the worst things maybe you've gone through in your own life or that you've known someone that's gone through, and what are some of the skills they had with money that got them through it, right? To not to like survive, yes, but maybe even come out on the other side better than before. Um, and while you're thinking about that and putting that into the chat, which I did share the link in the comments on the video to where you can find the last podcast episode where we talked about how to never be poor. But I want to share my screen and walk you through something we found very fascinating. This has nothing to do with money either, but it was helpful in terms of thinking through a little bit of what survival skills training could look like. And if you're not familiar with the Jim Edwards, he's a pretty cool dude. He really teaches people about marketing their businesses. I'm sure he would describe it a little differently. He's much more suave with money, I guess, or not with money, maybe with money. I don't know. Suave with words than I am. But he has this article that he just published this week called The Number One Factor in Success or Survival. And I put the link to this in the description of this video if you want to check that out. And he talks about how he went with his wife on a survival training with a Marine. And, this guy was a super expert, but also a super cool guy. And they learned how to trap, gather water, stitch people up, track, and how to build a fire underground. That seems pretty cool. I'd love to learn that. And he was taking notes the whole time because it was very cool. And then this guy talks about the 4 success factors in anything related to survival: attitude, skill, experience, and knowledge. And yeah, so skill, right? Like, you know how to carry the tray, you know how to build a fire, you've got the budgeting skills, whatever it might be. Experience, right? You learn a lot through experience. Knowledge, you actually know what a budget looks like and how to do it, right? Like, those 3 things are important. But what this guy said, like, and is, we can teach people skills and get them the experience, we can hand them the knowledge. But the number one factor that determines anybody's survival is not skill, it's not experience, it's not knowledge, it's attitude. Because your attitude is what's going to keep you going, or make you sit in the middle of the woods having a pity party and die. That is some pretty amazing stuff there. That attitude, out of all of these things, attitude is the most important. So whoever this guy is, I don't even think it says this guy's name, this awesome Marine, always a Marine, through Jim, and Jim sharing this with everybody, that is great. Now let's talk about how we can apply this to money. But before we do that, I want to share, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we've got this awesome comment from the Not Your Average Financial podcast. They say, this is a survival skill they're sharing: you can't use the snake's venom against the snake. The anti-venom is in its blood. And yes, in this metaphor, the snake is Wall Street. Thank you for sharing that, Not Your Average Financial podcast. I'm imagining that you are the one and only Mark Willis. So glad that you're here and sharing that with you. Yes, if you want to beat the snake, you can't use the snake's venom. That's great. Okay. Sorry, Brandon, you want to jump in real quick before we talk about attitude and money?
Well, I mean, I want to go back to my story. Whenever I think about going into the military, right? So if I had gone in, like, they told me I couldn't do it, I wouldn't be able to accomplish it due to health reasons and other things. And if I went into the military having a I can't do it attitude, do you think I would have made it through 3 months of boot camp?
Right.
No. I would have, and sometimes there is health reasons and there's other things that cause you to where you can't actually accomplish something, but oftentimes it starts with your attitude. And again, working with clients, I feel like sometimes we just got to have a great attitude around not just having a positive mindset. I mean, that's one thing, but an attitude of I can accomplish it. I'll do whatever it takes to get this resolved, whether it's budgeting, whether it's starting a policy, whether it's building a stable foundation. It all starts there. And you'll see the people that succeed versus not. Usually it starts with right between their ears.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jim, of course, goes on in his article. We encourage everybody to check it out, where he applies this to business and this idea that attitude is everything. It's the little thing that makes a big difference. He goes through and talks about that with business. But think about it, too. If you've ever heard those stories on the news of the person that gets lost and can't be found, they're in some kind of wilderness area and they're lost for like a month and then they're found. Every time I think of, at least that I can remember, the thing that kept them surviving wasn't always their skills. It was their attitude, their belief that they can make it through, their will to survive. And that can get you through a lot of things. But like, how do you cultivate that kind of attitude around money, especially when most of us hear money? It's like, la, 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 la. I don't want to think about it. I'm going to
I'm
put
not
my head in the
listening. Yep.
sand, right? It's too difficult. I can't learn those things, right? How do you get to that point where you're like, I do have the will. I can figure this out. I want to do this. And this is actually where we go back to one of the things we talked about in the podcast episode that came out today, How to Never Be Poor. Again, the link we shared in the description of the video as well in the comments. And like, even also, if you look at somebody who's been through a really hard financial situation, like even experienced homelessness because they didn't have money to pay rent, right? And they got evicted and then they couldn't find another place to live. And then they come out of it on the other side and they share like how they got through it. A lot of it was their attitude, right? Their will to figure it out. And they don't do it
Yeah.
alone. There's often other people pouring into them, helping them keep that resolve and that will to, get to the other side. But then there's also people who go through a wilderness time with money. They are laid off from their job. They can't find another job right away. They have some kind of illness that prevents them from working or disability. And they have to figure out like, how are they going to get through it? How are they going to make things work? And the people I've seen that do the best in that situation are the people who already were giving their dollars jobs, telling their money what to do, building up some cushion, a solid foundation that they could rely on, not taking too much risk and only risking money they can afford to lose. And the kinds of things that, guess what, we talk about all the time on Grandma's Wealth Wisdom, right? These aren't the things we're talking about all the time, aren't just like fun ways to manage your money and build wealth. They are, I believe, the basic financial survival skills that build your confidence, build your ability, that when the poop hits the fan, you're ready for it. And you can not only survive, but like do well in the midst of it. I don't know. What else would you add to that, Brandon?
Yeah, I think sometimes we get caught in the I want to have this big, I don't know, become a millionaire really fast, right? Um, and and oftentimes it's about the basics, right? It's all about how to make sure, like we said, how to never be poor. And we're drawn to the Kardashians' lifestyle or whatever, that kind of thing whenever we need to figure out the basic principles and get good at that, right? Learning how to ride a bike, almost, using different analogies. And I think that that's super powerful, that we need to think through those basics and not just say, I got that covered. Because oftentimes when it comes to healthy eating and exercise, it's the habits that we put ourselves in that build success.
Yeah.
And that's almost, and it gets boring almost to talk about, hey, how to budget, how to give every dollar a job, how to save, and you're like, well, shouldn't that be normal? But when crap hits the fan, you're a lot stronger because you've been preparing, ready, than when you weren't, right? We
Yeah.
don't just go
Yeah.
through basic training in the military just to sit on a beach somewhere, which is actually we are on a beach, but it's to go and be in combat somewhere else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you could, if you didn't have basic training and you just went straight to whatever the job is that you have in the military, whether it's actually like on the front lines or maybe in logistics or something like that, you're probably not going to do a good job because you don't have that same kind of common language, those foundational things figured out. It would be like taking a 5-year-old and saying, okay, now go get a job, right? Like they wouldn't be ready for it. They need some of that foundational growing and learning. Why should we think that our money should be any different, right? That we can pursue making $1 million and know how to do it if we haven't handled some of those basics yet. And yet, there's this kind of philosophy that if you want to solve your financial problems, just go make more money, which I have a huge problem with that because the people that make more money that haven't built some of these basics down, they just spend more money. They end up actually in
Yep.
more debt, not rather than less. That can't be the only thing. But imagine instead, if you get these basics down, you know that you've got things covered. You can survive pretty much with what anything life throws at you. The worst you can imagine life throwing at you, you've got a plan for. Maybe
Yep.
maybe not a zombie apocalypse, but like something like a disability or a major medical event. I got this covered. I'll be okay. A job loss, right? Like you've got a game plan for what to do there. Then guess what? You can go pursue that $1 million, making tons of money, and you'll know exactly what to do with it. You'll have those basics done. You'll manage, you'll be a better steward of those funds. And guess what? You might even make $2 million instead of just $1 million because of that, because you're being smart with your money. You know how to work with it. Not that you need to wait to go make money before you handle these basics, right? Do both at the same time. Just don't forget to get the basics too.
Yeah. Well, and I think again, it starts with when you're younger, and it start like for me as a parent now. When we talk to our clients, we ask, how were you taught about money? And oftentimes, it's not taught in school. It's not taught in even higher education because you give a loan and you can go learn your thing. So we want to skip. This is again going into the military thing. We want to go to the MOS or job skill, and we don't want to learn the basics of what we need to accomplish. And it starts when you're 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, and taking responsibility as parents, for me to him. But then at the same time, he's going to have to take his own responsibility and say, all right, I didn't get taught this by somebody else. Okay, whatever, suck it up. And learn it, right? You
Yeah.
gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
And too many people play the victim card, I think, and say, well, no one did this or no one did that. Honestly, you know how many YouTube channels are out there that you can learn that? You can learn how to budget, it will take effort.
Yeah. And that's where attitude is everything. If you believe you can do it, there are plenty of resources out there to give you the knowledge and the skills and the experience to know your numbers, to make smart financial decisions. But you first have to have the attitude for it. Even if, like, let's say you used our favorite budgeting tool, YNAB. They've got amazing resources, videos, podcasts, live trainings galore. They've got everything you need to learn the knowledge, to develop the skills, and to get the experience, to give every dollar a job, roll with the punches, save for a rainy day, and embrace your true expenses, whatever their 4 rules are. But it starts with the attitude, like, I can budget. I want to budget. I believe this will be good for my future if I budget. And I bet I can do it in a way doesn't feel restrictive, right? Like they promise it's not going to feel restrictive. So I'm going to go in with an open mind and see what that's like. And you go do that. And then you hear these crazy people, Amanda and Brandon Neely, talking about saving first rather than last. So you put that at the top of your budget and you start putting 1% aside every time you get paid. And then you bring that up to 2% after 3 months, right? And you go on this journey of kind of gamifying how much can I really set aside for my long-term and medium-term future. And this lady today named Wendy, she referred to it as catnip. Like this becomes a thrilling journey and a true adventure. And we've been on this adventure for over 7 years, and when you come at it with that kind of attitude, this is gonna be an adventure, it's gonna be fun. There
Yep.
could be some addicting parts here that are good for me, like I'm addicted to good habits kinda thing. And then when the poop hits the fan, you're stuck in a financial wilderness, the wild out there gets to you. You're like, I got this. I know my survival skills. I just put my head down and keep budgeting, right? Or I know how to roll with the punches because last month I spent a little too much. And so I know I can roll with the punches in this way or, whatever. Plus, your attitude has changed too. You've built that confidence that you know what you're doing. And that can get you, in my opinion, that can get you through any kind of wilderness or wild experience.
Yeah, I think again, it all starts with training whenever life is a little easier, when there isn't a situation, maybe
Or
that,
training when it's hard.
or training when it's hard. But if you start training when it's not so hard, you're going to be in a good position when it does get hard, right? And there is times when it's hard and when it's not, right?
Yeah.
And so training, and the other thing that it frustrates me so often is when people just make excuses. And they say, well, it's because of this person, or it's because of this, or because of that. One of the tenets that I think is really important, and what we don't like to do in our culture, is take responsibility for things. We'll give it to somebody else, and it's that person's fault or this person's fault or whatever. And honestly, with people's financials, it starts with you, like what Amanda says, the man or woman in the mirror, and what does that mean, right? And there's ways that we can overcome those things, and then part of it's attitude. Most of it is attitude, and then not making excuses of, well, this happened because of whatever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, you've probably heard the saying, if, you want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't wanna do something, you'll find an excuse.
Yep.
And the biggest thing is just deciding it's time for you to figure out how to do money, right? To go on this
Yep.
adventure of making your money work for you rather than for the marketers and, copywriters out there. I mean, love you guys, love you, Jim Edwards, but I don't want you telling me what my money to do. I want to tell my money what to do, right? And there's a
Yep.
difference there because then I find somebody like Jim Edwards and I see there's a really good product that already aligns with my priorities and what I'm looking for, and I'm going to spend money on it, right? Like that's already there
Yep.
in my budget to use. So I'm not like I've given Jim Edwards money before. I'm not going to, say that I haven't. But um the where was I going with that? Sorry, I got a little sidetracked. Um so when this is what I was going to say. If you're looking for a sign that this is the right time to get serious about your adventure with money and start the journey toward getting to a smarter, stabler financial place, here's your sign. This is it. Something brought you to this video today to watch it, to be here, to listen to these crazy cats named Brandon and Amanda Neely, and their whole concept of Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. Something brought you here today. You're meant to hear this message that this is a great time to start that adventure and to be serious about it and start moving toward your point B from wherever you're at. And honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we're here to help you do that. I mentioned earlier that
Yep.
people who like get through a wilderness experience, they do it with other people. They hardly ever do it alone. Even if they seem like they're doing it alone, they had some kind of help along the way. They had some kind of guide or a community around them. That's been true in
A
our own
team.
lives. Some of our wilderness experiences that we would never have gotten through them if it hadn't been for other people. And so we love to be those people, for people, right? That see a wilderness experience or going through it or just want to be prepared, have somebody in their corner if something happens, right? Um, because they like it takes the team often. It takes a community to just do those things. And just imagine if you were going to get stuck in the wilderness, like literally, we're going back to these survival skills, like let's say you're going to get just dropped in the middle of nowhere, like that one Discovery show or whatever that is, where the guy gets dropped in the middle of nowhere and he's got to find his way out. Would you rather do that alone, or would you rather do that with a guide who's been there, who's done that, who's helped people get through the same treacherous wilderness, right? I think that's a pretty big no-brainer. I'd rather have the guide, and that's
Yeah.
when a financial professional can serve that role in your life if that's how they're thinking about it too, right? Not just how am I going to make money, how am I going to, um, win from this situation, but really how can I help people never be poor, survive whatever life throws their way, and teach them and help them develop the kind of basic skills they need to survive, but also to make that couple $1 million per year if they want to.
Yeah.
Okay, that was totally a rant there.
And I just realized whenever we did the survival guide, we were not thinking about a guide as a person, really, when we were writing it. We were just thinking about it as a survival guide. You see those things that are, hey, how to build a fire, and how to do this or that. Those are really good books, playbooks, if you will. And so, but having that physical person too is very helpful. That's why you have guides that read the guides, I guess. Um, so, and why in the military you have drill instructors, right? And I'm not saying we're drill instructors, but
Brandon is a little bit
maybe me
sometimes.
more. But again, sometimes I hear people and I look at somebody who's 70 and 80 years old calling us asking for advice, and I'm like, man, I wish they would have helped. They would have figured it out 20 years ago, but they didn't develop those muscles 20 years ago. And that's why we want to reach a younger generation. Not, and I'm all for reaching 60, 70-year olds. I love you guys. But how about we help the people who are younger not make the same mistakes that the older generation did, maybe, right? That's the whole point of any of that, right? And so, um, what is it that we could teach? Both what we wish we would have done different, and both the skill sets of what we did do right.
Yeah.
And I think that there's you can both of those things are really important.
Yep. And going back to this idea of an attitude, it does take an attitude of humility to ask for help, right? Or to seek out a guide. Um, so you not only have to have the attitude that you can know your numbers,
Mhm.
you can break through to a smart, stable financial future, you can, make sure that you'll never be poor, that kind of thing. But also, you can't do it alone. And to have that humility to admit that and to seek someone who is going to um, help you have the right attitude when you don't want to, right? To help you guide you through the adventure of getting to your point B, those unique dreams and goals that you have. Um, that's an attitude thing right there still.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you an example that I just literally had yesterday. So we are getting a bathroom redone downstairs for some really awesome stuff that's coming that you guys will see, right? All is connected, but a bathroom. And we had a contractor come in, and the contractor said, I can't do this, I can't do that, and we can't do that, all kinds of things that I'm like, I don't know. I hired you to help solve the problem. I don't know how to fix it. That's why I got a guide, you, to help me. And I got frustrated so much that I'm like, all right, you do whatever, but I'm leaving. I can't figure out your problem for you. Um, and then he left and another guy came in. This guy happened to be an entrepreneur who ran a business, and he said, I will figure out there's always a way to figure it out. You will always have problems. That's the way life is. The question is, how do you find solutions to those problems?
Yeah.
And that's an attitude situation. The other guy was an employee probably mindset. This guy is a business owner mindset. He's like, I'll figure it out. I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're getting into business advice, which again, go back to that Jim Edwards article about attitude and business. But
Or last week's
100%,
episode. Last
or
week's
yeah,
episode on
last
Ten
week's
Commandments
episode.
of, I don't know, whatever our 10 Commandments were.
Yeah. But that attitude is again, what we're talking about. If you believe you can, you'll find a way. And that attitude goes a really far way to help you find the skills, the knowledge, and the experience that you need to find the way. And there was something as you were talking that I was thinking, oh, it's like I was talking with a lady this week who used to work in customer service. And when you get on the phone with the client who's mad, right? And they're saying, well, can you do this? And you have to say no. Well, can you do that? Can you say no? She shared her tactic for turning it around, where she would say, ask me a question I can say yes to. And that's totally an attitude thing, right? Because then that puts it on the customer then to ask you a question that you can say yes to and to get a win in, which changes the entire dynamic, the entire attitude of the conversation and can move it forward. And this is where, as guides, right? She was performing the guide role in the conversation, right? The customer was there seeking X, Y, or Z, and she was the guide trying to figure out a way to do it. And that was one of her ways to figure it out. Give me a question I can say yes to. And this is where a guide really like helps shift attitudes and helps find the yes in a land of no's, right? And people can feel so handcuffed by financial matters. They can feel like there are no options. And yet it can be really fun in our roles to see options that people can't see for themselves, to find a way forward, to find that yes when it seems like everything is a no. So a couple little business strategies there for you. Find the yes, especially when you're dealing with an irate customer like Brandon was.
I wasn't. I was just wanting to
I know.
solve a
So
problem.
to give everybody the context here, there's a person that came in and gave us the quote, right? Said, we can do this. And then the guy shows up to like do the work right after we'd accepted the quote. And he said, no, we can't do this. And we can't do this. And we can't do this without offering a solution. So there's another business lesson. If you're having one person give quotes, another person do the work, make sure they're on the same page. Because that was the most frustrating thing. Well, this other guy said that you could do this or that, and then it wasn't happening. But then also find the yes for people, and for the yes for yourself. And if you can't see it for yourself, find a financial professional that will help you find that yes and get that right attitude to move forward and break through to a smart, stable financial future. Anything to add,
Yep.
Brandon, by way of wrap up? Oh, I know. Again, in the comments, we want to hear survival skills that you have, financial survival skills that you think we should know about, or things that have been helpful for you when you've gone through a financial wilderness. Also, be sure to like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe so that you get notifications of future videos. We're hoping to go live almost every Friday at this time. So you'll get like a notification if you subscribe and hit the bell that we're live.
Yeah. I mean, because we might go on vacation on a Friday and we won't be doing
We
video.
will go on vacation on a Friday.
Yep. And I think don't be defeated by your situation. There's always a way. There's a way, even when there is obstacles, how to overcome that, how to break through, right? And remember that our world is about giving you shortcuts often, and sometimes at a very big cost. The credit card companies want to give us, oh, you can get this easy without any pain. And the the problem is, uh, when it comes to even a life to the fullest and using this spiritual stuff, um, it is going through wilderness, going through some of that to get to where you need to go. And we want to escape that, but maybe that is part of your story, part of your um, everybody's story actually. And this is something we've even talked about as parents. Again, saying, okay, how can we help our son um, learn and grow, but go through some sort of wilderness that will help him.
Yeah. How do we
Maybe,
raise a
right?
resilient child? What does that look like? And sometimes it is doing some difficult things rather than doing, like letting him do it for himself rather than doing it for him and being his guides through some of those difficult things. Not that we're going to like drop him in the middle of nowhere and say, find your way out, right? Controlled, supervised, right? Like kind of things. But sure, maybe he learns that he's resilient by going bungee jumping or, zip lining or something like that. That those are ways to help build resiliency. And I want to make sure we share if that we are totally available to chat, see if we can help you with some kind of mindset shift or attitude shift, answer questions that you might be thinking, point you in the right direction. If that direction includes working with us, we'll let you know that. But if it's not working with us, we'll still share some resources and help you find the answers to the financial questions you're asking. So the way you do that is go to grandmaswealthwisdom.com/intro, and there you can book an intro call with one of us.
Yep. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thanks again for joining us for this episode, and looking forward to chatting with you guys next week. Again, hit the comments, share. If you're on the replay, hit #replay or whatever you call that. And we would love to hear from you guys. We don't want this not just to be between Amanda and I, but really build a community of people that are, again, breaking through to a smart, stable financial future, not just for them, but for many generations to come.
Okay. Take care. We'll see you soon and hope to talk to you again. grandmaswealthwisdom.com/intro.